Okay, so we're in the middle of talking. We're starting today, chapter 48. There's going to be 3 classes. We're in the middle of talking about Hashem's love to us. Hashem loves us so much to the point that automatically we're going to love him back. And we learned how much does Hashem love us. He's the very high king, and he went to the lowest place in Egypt. And he took us out, embraced us, and took us all the way to his space and gave us the Torah and hugged us and kissed us. So that's the love of Hashem. We're going to see today another time that Hashem showed us this much love. So there's the fact that Hashem came to Egypt, but there's also the fact that Hashem created the world. Hashem had to contract himself. Hashem is like a type of infinite God, a God that is beyond anything we can measure. That's what we're going to learn about today. And the fact that he contracted himself in order to create the world and in order to create us and in order to be present in this world and in order to shower us with love in this world, that itself is showing us how much he had to give up on, like how much he had to kind of leave behind in order to contract himself and be here with us. And that's another way that Hashem's showing his love to us in an unbelievable way, and that's going to generate automatically for us to love him back. So it says that actually that somebody that they brought the first time they brought the Tanya to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. He was looking at this Tanya and he said, wow, how did the Alter Rebbe, the one who wrote the Tanya, manage to put such a big God into such a small book? Like he took like this huge thing and put it into words, into a book. And in the same way, we have King Solomon ask the same question. He asked, how can such a big God come into such a small house, like into the Beit HaMikdash? Shalom, shalom, how can such a big God come into such a small house? Like when he built when he saw that they're going to build the Beit HaMikdash. And when we look at the question in a bigger way, it's like, how did such a big God create such a limited world? Like, yes, the world is big, but it's still measurable and it's still very limited. Another way of looking at it is, sometimes you dream of all kinds of things that are impossible. But there's also, actually, it's reminding me that today I heard some news that it felt like a bad dream. So I just want to dedicate the class to a refuah shlema of my dear uncle, Baruch Mordechai ben Chaim. He was already sick.
Yeah.
He was better, the Chazan.
Yeah, no.
And now he got again.
No.
Yeah.
Here in
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one he came to see.
He was Chazan here in Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Yeah. So we're dedicating his class for a complete refuah shlema and very soon. So talking about dreams, I'm like, is it like, am I waking up from this bad dream? And I'm like, no, it's reality. But anyways, there's a dream. That's yeah, he's in his 50s. Yeah. Anyways, there's an example that one of the examples that's something impossible that the Talmud brings is the fact that you can take, like he says, like to illustrate something, that you take an elephant and put it in the hole of a needle. So how can you put a massive elephant into a tiny hole of a needle? Like, how does that? And it's like, how is it possible and why is it possible? So the only way that it's actually possible is either contract and shrink somehow the elephant, or you make the hole bigger. Okay. So we're gonna see today how come Hashem, who is like so big, like in an unbelievable way, created our world, like a world that's so limited and so like literally like it's much smaller. The world to Hashem is much smaller than this hole in the needle for the elephant, literally. But that's what we're going to understand today, like the extent of that contraction that had to happen. So how did such a big Hashem create a world? It's the fact that he contracted himself. There's a secret of contraction over there that happened. And we're going to see that Hashem contracted himself into a certain type of light that was able to create this limited world, this measurable world. so as much as we understood how much Hashem loves us so much, and that we're supposed to reciprocate, we're not supposed to, but we're automatically reciprocating this love. We're going to see how what Hashem did in order to come all the way down to us. What Hashem abandoned to contract himself and to come all the way down to us. Like the fact that he contracted himself to create this world and to create us and to be here with us, that's huge. That's a huge step of Hashem that comes from love. Like it's an act of love. And then that's going to generate in us, and we're going to see how we are going to reciprocate this very love of like how much Hashem is giving up everything he had to be here with us, how much we should give up everything we have to give ourselves to Hashem. That's really the goal over here. So we're going to start touching on that goal today. And we're going to, so I'm going to preface this by saying that this chapter is a deep chapter, okay? Because we're going to be talking about that contraction. It's like a little bit above us, but we're going to understand it. It's not going to be too much, but we're going to simplify it to ourselves. But this chapter is one of the deepest chapters in Tanya. Basically, we're going to try to understand the big gap between how big Hashem is and how the world is so limited, and the bridging of that, like how we're going to bridge from this big God, how through a contraction he came and created this world. So let's try to first understand, what does this big God mean? God is called Ein Sof, unlimited, right? You heard this, like this concept of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ein Sof. So we now, what does Ein Sof mean? What is something that has no end? So think about things now. Can you think of ideas of things in this world that have no end?
Light.
Right?
Light.
Light is stuff. No.
If you turn off the lights,
Oh, yeah. If
it
it's
has
no-
an end.
Yeah, if it's wall, but if it's no, like.
If there's no wall, it has no end. It doesn't stop
What
somewhere.
about daytime?
It stops at
Night. It's
the rays.
energy.
The rays. If you measure the ray of light, it finishes at some point.
Okay, but energy, the light, no? I didn't, okay.
Okay. Anyways, fine. Let's say the light. Let's say the stars. Let's say the stars, the sea, the ocean. Very good. Let's say how much sand there is. Okay. We can also say that there's infinite amount of numbers, like the numbers.
No stars, no stuff, no. Like it's unlimited.
Okay,
The
so
sun
so let's say that let's think that the sun is unlimited. That's fine. Think about also, just like you say, light. There's the energy, the electricity. Like look at the nuclear power plants. Like how much electricity has there. It's like a huge amount, right? There's like an unlimited amount of energy that's at the source. But when we say now, let's think. When we say no end, in our own words as a human being, it really means that we can't count. It doesn't mean that there's no end. It means that it's hard to count, really. Like the real word would be, in Hebrew, we say enspo. I don't know if there's enspo. Enspo. Like you can't count it, okay? So you were talking about something very, very big that we can't get to the end of it, okay? But of course, we know that each thing does really have an end. If you start counting, if you start measuring those rays of light, you're going to see that there's an end to it, okay? There's a certain amount of stars. There's a certain amount of sand, of like grains of sand. Like there's a certain amount of liters of water in the ocean. Like there's a certain amount. If you start measuring, there is a certain amount. There's a certain amount of energy, like in the electricity. Like there's a certain amount in everything, okay? And every amount, even if it's a very big amount, at some point there's a limit. There's a number and there's a limit. It ends somewhere. But when we say that Hashem's light has no end, or Ein Sof, it really means that light has really no end, no limitation to it. Okay, and in a few ways it has no limitation. No limitations in space. Okay, it's like literally like Hashem's light can light up the space. It can light up everywhere, far, near, every space. There's no limitation to how much space the light is present. Like you're not saying it can only light in like a certain amount of space. It's lighting up the whole world, the whole universe. Also time-wise, if you think of time, the light of Hashem is forever. It was in the past, it was in the present, it's in the future. and it doesn't become weaker with time, okay? And it's not stronger at a certain given amount of at a certain given time as another time. It's the same strength at all times, okay? We say Hashem Elech, Hashem Alach, Hashem Yimloch. Hashem is like always the same, forever. Okay, so there's no limit of time. There's no definition to you can't define Hashem's the amount and the capacity of Hashem's light to how much, to a certain, you can't say that has a certain domain, that it has a certain characteristic. Like you can't measure it in any way. It's just like you can't say it has a certain shape or a certain color. It's like you can't say it's stronger, it's weaker. Like it's just like in every way unlimited. In every way it has no end. Okay, like there's no way to limit it. Just to give you a little bit of a story to illustrate this, that you literally can't define who Hashem is. There's a Chassid that he learned a lot of Chassidut, okay, and a lot of Kabbalah. And every question people had, you would go to him and he would know he would have an answer. Okay, his name is Rav Moshe Gurari. And one time, someone else, Rav Zalman Moshe Yitzchaki, wanted to show him, even though he knows everything and he knows so much, he's still, with everything that he knows, there's still stuff that is beyond his knowledge, something more than that. So he asked him, can you define to me Hashem? Like, I want you to give me a definition of Hashem, like to give me a certain. And Moshe said, you know what? I can't explain such a thing because you're talking about something that has no limitation, no end. Like it's something that you can't put in a definition. You can't. So this guy that came to him was like, maybe, you learned so much. Maybe you can start, give a certain type of definition. Maybe you have a very good definition for it. And he kind of pushed him. And at the end, he's like, you know what? Okay. He started saying, Ein Sof means, and he just started saying those words. And he's like, if you already tried to define it, you just try. You're already not defining who Hashem really is. Like you already got out of the who. Like as soon as you try to define, you're already not in the definition of. You're already not in this unlimited type of Hashem. Okay, so the first foundation that the Alter Rebbe puts in this chapter of Tanya is the fact that Or Ein Sof, this unlimited light, the light that has no end, is literally like it's nothing that we can understand. It's nothing that, like, everything that we think has no end does have an end, but the light of Hashem is something that has no end, no limitation, and there's no end to it. So let me just see this in those words. Okay, beginning of chapter 48. Contemplating the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, the thinking person will come to the realization that, as his name indicates, so is he. There is no end or limit or finitude at all to the light and vitality that diffuse from his simple will. Simple in the sense that it has no cause and no its subject or the limitation inherent in mortal will, and which is united with his essence and being in perfect unity. Okay, that light, it's the essence of Hashem, has no end, no limit. Okay, that's the light we're talking about. So we understood how that light has no end. Okay, now let's talk about our world, the world that Hashem created. Is our world unlimited or limited? Is it like an Ein Sof type of world, or is it a limited? So you think the world, our world, yeah, planet Earth, or the universe, including all the planets?
It's hard to say about universe.
It's hard to say, but okay.
Earth, it's limited, but
so let me tell you.
Okay,
so let me tell you something. First of all, there's a rule that every cause has an effect. Okay, there's always like a cause effect. Okay, for example, if a person is limited and it's temporary, everything that the person does will be limited and temporary. Okay, so the same way Hashem is eternal. So whatever he creates is eternal. So according to that, this unlimited light would have created a world that's unlimited. Okay, like a world that is literally unlimited. So let's look at our world and try to look at our world. Imagine that the world is unlimited. Everything in the world is unlimited. Imagine such a world. It's very hard for us to imagine, but let's try to take a few examples of our lives to try and imagine what an unlimited type of world would look like. I'll give you a few examples. There would be no death. There would be no end to our life. We would be the same, we wouldn't expire. We would be the same. We would live forever. That would mean
People used to be, they were young all the time. Like,
yeah, but there was an end still. There was an end at some point.
Yeah.
But if Hashem would have created the world just like he is unlimited, he would have created a world unlimited, everything would have been unlimited. People would have been unlimited. We would never be tired because our energy would be unlimited. Okay, like we would always be, but that would be the unlimited world that Hashem would have created, right? With energy that never and strength that never gets tired, with batteries that never expire, that never drain. No. Hashem did contract himself. We'll see. Hashem did not create such a world.
But before they made the sin, it was intention for them to be unlimited?
No.
Even from the beginning? Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure. Dying, no, it was a limited world to begin. Anyways, I'm just saying, imagine the world would have been unlimited, just like Hashem is unlimited. Okay, also our intelligence, the way we would think would be unlimited. We would be like, there would be no end to how smart we are, to how we can understand anything. There would be rain, no end. Like I'm saying, nothing would stop, So in reality, we see that if the world would be unlimited, okay, we wouldn't have the concept of time, we wouldn't have the concept of space. Everything would be like unlimited. It's very hard for us to picture it. Very, very hard. There's actually a joke of the golem of Prague, that if there was no end, said then you would like he thought there's no end, so he's like taking out water from the well nonstop until the whole place was flooded. Like I'm saying, you can dig forever and ever. But I'm saying, but the world is like that. The fact is that our world has limit, like it has an end, it has a limit in every sense of the world, every piece of the world, every part of the world, time, place, everything in the world has a certain limit. Okay. The fact that we have a lifespan and we get weaker as the years go by, the fact that we wake up in the morning with so much energy and we become tired throughout the day, and then we need to eat to re-energize ourselves. Like we expire, like we become, we need to constantly redo something to ourselves. Everything in the world also has a measurement, has a weight, has a color, has like different characteristics that are very limited. Okay. Also space, everything has there's a distance from one thing to another. There's a measurement from one thing to another. Even the big things will be measurable compared to small things. Okay. And also when you talk about time, we have the past, we have the present, we have the future. It's not all mixed. For Hashem, everything is one big thing that's unlimited. But for us, did it happen? It didn't happen yet. Like we see everything like with limits of time.
Maybe someone wants to ask us.
Probably.
No? Oh,
About that.
sorry. I thought maybe someone.
Anyway, okay, let's take for example also the room that we're sitting in. Okay, everything in this room has a measurement, has a limit, has something to it to describe it. Okay, has certain conditions to it. Okay, every piece of furniture has different measurements, has a beginning, has an end. We have a beginning and an end. Like everything has a beginning and an end and is measured. Okay, and so that's very physical. You agree that everything has a beginning and an end. But believe it or not, it's not just this physical world that is limited, but even the upper worlds. They also have a beginning and an end. We don't see it, they're higher than us, but even all the angels, all the neshamas, everything has a certain beginning and end and is measured. Okay. It's not just that so there's the physical measurements of like weight and measurements, that type of things. But it doesn't mean that there's no measurements and no limitations to the spiritual worlds. Yeah.
What do you mean, like neshama? It's not forever.
No, Hashem creates new neshamot. They have a beginning.
I know, but going there, but still.
Yeah, they don't expire completely. You're right. They don't expire completely, but there's a certain amount, there's a certain space, there's a certain time, there's a certain limit to it. It's not like,
But how do you know? No one was asking them down to tell us. what
about the
measurement-
neshamot, about
what
all
the
this. Okay,
measurement.
so you're talking about all the spiritual world.
No,
So
what
we
the
have
measurement,
rabbis.
say, end and beginning.
No, so we
Somebody-
don't know those measurements, but we know that they're limited. That's what we know, that Hashem is unlimited and everything that Hashem created is limited. That's what we're learning right now. Everything, no, you'll see. I mean, I believe what Dr. Rebbe is saying. You'll
No,
see.
no, okay,
He's going to
that
say that even the
doesn't make-
spiritual
that-
world, I know it's very hard for us to
Sure, to
grasp.
me.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine.
Because no one was there. How we can
That's
know?
fine. It's hard for us to
Yes,
grasp
I-
it because it's a spiritual world and we
Yeah.
understand very physical. But I'm telling you that even those things have a certain limited capacity. Okay, it's not unlimited, it's also limited. It's within a certain limitation. You know what? Even if you don't see it, let's just believe it for now. Okay. And we know that no one, even those neshamas and even those angels, they can't fully grasp who Hashem at the source truly is. Hashem at the source is so unlimited that nothing in this world, like nothing, not even an angel and not even a neshama, can grasp fully this unlimited Hashem, like this Hashem that doesn't end. Okay, like it's like we can't fully grasp it. Okay. It says even Moshe Rabbeinu, actually, he wanted to see Hashem. He says, please show me yourself. Hareini na et kvodecha. Show me your honor, whatever. Show me yourself. And Hashem answered to him, Ki lo yareni adam v'chai. Like a person cannot see me and stay alive. It's impossible. So he says, you know what? And then therefore Hashem said, V'raita et achorai ufanai lo yerau. You're going to see my back and not my face. Like you're going to be able that you're going to be able to see. So Moshe can see something that he can grasp, but he can't grasp the full Hashem. Like even Moshe Rabbeinu cannot grasp fully who Hashem is. Impossible. The Gemara also talks about, like in the Talmud, there's a story about people that came, 4 different people that came into the higher world, and they right away died because the intensity of the light of Hashem. No, in the higher worlds. Anyways, they got it. They didn't last. Anyways, it's the true Hashem is something that we cannot grasp. Impossible. Okay. Anyways, so what I'm saying here is that even the angels, even the upper worlds, they cannot, like, they're also within a certain limitation and they cannot grasp who really Hashem is. And even the fact that we call it a world in Hebrew is olam. What is olam? Olam means that there's a certain olam comes from the word hidden, he'elem, ne'elam. There's already something hidden, there's something limited, there's something like it's telling us that there's a certain frame. Okay, it's something that, like the fact that it's in the world, it's already within a certain frame that's limited and that is defined. And within it, there's a lot of different things that are also, for sure, all have a definition. Okay, so every frame has a certain limitation, has a certain whatever, it has a certain beginning and end. I want to tell you a story for you to see what it means that there's no limitations and what makes it have a certain limitation. It's like really the light that comes can be unlimited, but then the recipient limits it. Just like you mentioned earlier, by the way, the light that comes into a room, the walls of the room will limit the light. There's a story, you may have heard this story already. It's from the Tanakh somewhere about there's a prophet Elisha, and there was a woman that came to him, and she had a big problem. She's like, I have 2 sons, and my son was sick and passed away, and he left behind a lot of debts, and I can't pay those debts. And now the people that I owe money to want my kids to work hard to pay up those debts. It's like, it's impossible. And she's asking this prophet for help. And he asked her first, how come your husband left so many debts behind? It's really unbelievable. Her husband, his name was Obadiah, and he was working for for the king Achav, for a very bad king. And this king, he actually had a big business. He had a lot of money, and he was a God-fearing, and he was giving a lot of tzedakah. He was doing a lot of good things, but he worked for the king, and he saw over there basically the queen wanted to kill. She was very, very bad, and she was trying to kill every Jewish prophet and whatever there was around in those days. And this Ovadia put his life in danger to hide those prophets into hidden places. And with his money, he would go and feed them, go and give them whatever they need without anyone knowing, to make sure that they stay alive. And he made them, whatever, he kept them alive with all his money that way. And that put him into big debts because he wasn't getting anything back for it. So this woman, now he passed away, and the woman, his wife, comes with a lot of debts. She comes to the prophet and she's like, what can I do? And like, can you help me? So he asked her, what do you have in your house? He says, all I have in my house is one little jug, an empty jug of oil. And he told her, listen, go collect more jugs. Go get a little bit of oil and start filling up all the jugs. And you know the story? She was starting to fill up the jugs, and there was unlimited oil filling up all the jugs. Miracle of Hanukkah, but much more. She was able to sell all the oil. So basically, she was pouring oil, and however amount, she had many jugs. She filled up all the jugs with oil. It was unlimited oil, filling up all the jugs. She had a lot of oil now. The miracle happened, and she was able to sell all this oil and make a lot of money, and make more. And she was able to pay back the debts and live comfortably. What we see in this story is the transition from the unlimited to the limited. Okay, a limitation means that there's a jug. Let's say there was 10 jugs. She was able to only fill up 10 jugs. If she should have 11 jugs, she would have been able to fill up. But the amount of jugs, that was the limitation. But the oil was just pouring and pouring and pouring and multiplying itself. Like there was no end to it. There was no limitation to it. Okay, that's what we're talking about. It's talking about an unbelievable amount of light that contracts himself. So we're going to see in the Tanya how the Alter Rebbe talks about this world, physical and spiritual. This world, what would happen? First of all, he says, what would happen in this world if it would be an unlimited world? You'll see he describes. Imagine there would be no limitation of time, no limitation of space. Okay, it's not what we know. And then he's going to start going into he's going to start saying, look, as much as you think it's unlimited, there's limitations. He's going to calculate the distance between the world and the heaven, that it's 500 years of walking. That's how long it takes to go from earth to heaven. So there's things that end up having a certain measurement. And he's going to say that even the upper worlds, the spiritual worlds, the neshamot, the malachim, the angels, they also have limits. Okay, and they can't grasp the Hashem, who Hashem is as its source, which is like an unlimited amount of light, an unlimited amount of Hashem. Everybody is limited in how much they can receive of Hashem. Then we're going to understand what type of contraction Hashem had to go through to create this world. Had the worlds descended from the light of the Blessed Ein Sof without contraction, but according to a gradual descent from grade to grade by means of cause and effect, if it would be according to cause and effect, the loftier level being the direct cause for the manifestation of the level immediately following it. So if this world would have been an unlimited world, the world and all it contains would not have been created in its present form, in a finite and limited order. From the earth to the firmament is a distance of 500 years. 500 years journey being a finite dimension. And similarly, limited is the distance between one firmament and the next. And so also the radial extends for each firmament as a distance of 500 years. And all the above applies to this world. Now we've seen not just this world, even the world to come, and the higher level of Gan Eden, the abode of the souls and the great tzaddikim, and the souls themselves. And needless to add, the angels are all in the realm of bounds and limitations. For there is a limit to their apprehension, to how much they understand the light of the Blessed Ein Sof, which shines upon them through being closed in Chochmah Bina Dat, and so on. More. Hence, there is also a limit to the enjoyment that they derive from the rays of the Shekhinah and to their pleasure in the light of God, for they are incapable of deriving enjoyment and delight of an infinite order without being nullified out of their existence and returning to their source. Okay, so we understood so far how Hashem, the light of Hashem is eternal and has no limitation in any kind of way. Not space, not time. Then we understood that this world, okay, and the spiritual world and the physical world all have a limitation and cannot grasp who Hashem truly is. Now we understand that there's really an unbelievable gap between Hashem and this world. Like you're talking about the unlimited and the limited. How seemingly it seems that you can't connect those two. There's no connection between Hashem and this world. So the big question is, if everything comes from Hashem, from an unlimited type of Hashem, how did such a limited type of world come out of it? It doesn't make sense logically. Logically, who you are, that's what you create. If Hashem is unlimited, he creates unlimited things. But how did Hashem, who is so unlimited, created such limited things? So the answer is now in the concept of contraction. Okay, Hashem literally contracted his light, his unlimited type of light, through many, many, many levels of contractions. And that's how he created a lot of creations in this world. Everything is limited. Everything is like a limited type of being. Now, even in our world, we see this concept of contraction. So let's try to understand what type of contraction we see in our world, and then I want to understand the concept of contraction in Hashem's world. Imagine this massive plant of nuclear power. Okay, a lot of electricity. Am I going to take my phone and go charge it and put it like in that original electricity power? My phone is going to burn. My phone is going to explode. What do I need to do in order to charge my phone? They need to take that plant and divide it into a bunch of different powers, and there's transformators that make it into smaller amounts, and then it gets spread throughout the city, and it gets spread into even smaller amounts, all these transformators that are behind our walls, until you have a regular plug that I can plug and charge my phone. Like, it's not the same intensity of power than it is at the original of this nuclear at the power station. You understand? You saw how much the energy had to contract itself in order to charge my little phone. So, and another example is when you have a very, very, very genius person. And do you think a genius person can be a good teacher? Not necessarily, because sometimes somebody that's too smart or very, very smart, he has a very hard time explaining things to small people, to simple people. Like it's gonna be very, very hard for him to go down to the level of the person to try and explain it with examples that the person will understand. Like he needs to really contract himself and go down to that level of this person, of this child, and explain it with examples and stories that the child will understand. It's only understand those math concepts. It's very, very hard. So, Lahavdil, whatever, we have now Hashem. In the same way, Hashem is so unlimited, but he wanted to create us human beings. He wanted to create a world for us. So he really had to contract himself to come down to this world, to take this infinite light. And so what he literally had to do, he wasn't able to just contract himself. It was a drastic type of change. And we'll see that the Arizal, whatever in the Zohar, like in the Kabbalah, says that it's called the Tzimtzum HaRishon. The first type of contraction that happened there, he literally had to evict the light out of himself. So basically, there's him with the light, and then he had to take the light out of him and leave himself somewhere. I don't know. It's very hard for us to grasp this whole concept, but he literally had to leave a piece of himself behind and share the light with some of the rays of light of himself. And that light, he contracted it and contracted it. Now that light is not just that it's contracted, but it's just that there's layers of curtains hiding it. Because, if the light is very strong, you need like sunglasses or you need like curtains to make it less. So, but the stronger you are, let's say the stronger your eyes are, the more you can see the sunlight. So the higher the person, the higher the level of a person, like a tzaddik, he has less curtains. The Hashem is less hidden for him. But for us, Hashem is in the lowest world, Hashem is very, very hidden. There's a lot of layers hiding that light. Like the light is completely contracted in the sense that it's completely hidden, very, very, very hidden. And the more we get closer to Hashem, the more we're unveiling and taking out some of those curtains.
Don't we feel those levels, like our misbehavior or?
Yeah, I'm saying every moment we can get closer to Hashem, which means that we're unveiling some curtains. And when we get further from Hashem, Hashem is basically more hidden. It's not that Hashem is smaller. Hashem is the same, but we're seeing less of him because we're creating those curtains in between. Anyways, hopefully you grasp a little bit of how this concept works. Now let me give you another example of a contraction, very cute story. There was one day a king, and the prince, his son, became a little bit crazy, and he decided that he's a chicken. And he's going to become a chicken. And he started sitting under the table without any clothes and started eating crumbs of bread, just like a chicken. And it was very weird. And like he really, something went wrong with him. And the king was very worried. He brought a bunch of doctors to try and help him. And the king was very sad about all this. And he wasn't able to heal him until he found a very smart person. And that said, I'm going to heal him. What did this smart person do? He went down to his level. He took off his clothes, sat down under the table with him, and started eating the breadcrumbs with him. And this prince asked him, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm a chicken." He's like, "Oh, I'm also a chicken." And then they were like together. They became friends. They got used to each other. And then the smart man put on himself like clothes, and he told the prince, "You know, you think that a chicken can't wear anything on him? Why not? We can be a chicken and wear something on ourselves, like put something on." So they both put on some clothes. And then he gave him some pants and he said, "You know what? You think a chicken can't wear pants? Why not? Okay, let's wear pants. We can be chicken and wear clothes, and pants." And then he says, "You know what? Who said you think that chicken can't eat better food? We can be chickens and eat food from the table. Like I'm saying, nice food. We don't have to eat only breadcrumbs." And then he said, and then he continued. He says, "You know what? You think chickens can only sit under the table? Maybe we can be chicken and we can sit on a chair. Who cares, And then slowly, he actually healed this prince and made him look normal. He was thought he's still a chicken, but slowly he's a chicken and doing everything like a human being. And then he ended up becoming a human being. What do we learn here? Is that of course, this very smart person was talking to him and tried to go down to his level and use that kid's logic to be able to turn him into a normal person. So even though this person was very smart, like, he had this idea, but he still had to go down to the level of a chicken. He had to behave like a chicken, like that kid, in order to be able to go to literally get into his soul, get into his heart, get him to listen to him. We do it all the time, exactly. We contract ourselves. We talk like a baby to babies. Yeah, sometimes we contract themselves. So there's this concept of contractions that we do, exactly. So we have to contract ourselves in order to be at our level. And Hashem, he loves us so much that he's not just giving us his own life because we would die, it wouldn't work. We wouldn't be interested in it. But he's contracting himself to us in a way that we can feel him and see him and appreciate him all the way down in order for us to see him. So we'll see now how the Alter Rebbe explains this concept of this contraction, how it's really also the light that's hidden more and more, like I told you with these curtains, and the ones that are at the lowest level, we're just receiving much less of his light. Now, as for the intricate details of the contractions, how they achieve their effect and what they actually are, this is not the place for the explanation. But in general, there is something in the nature of an obscuring and concealment of the flow of light and vitality, so that the light and vitality should illumine and reach the lower creatures in a revealed manner, pervading them and acting in them and animating them in such a way that they exist ex nihilo. Ex nihilo means yesh me'ayin is that it's something that exists out of what, and it comes from what? It comes from something that doesn't exist. It comes from nothing. I'll explain to you this concept soon. This yesh me'ayin, which they call ex nihilo here, is only an extremely minute measure so that they be in state of finitude and limitation. They basically is saying how Hashem, that the lowest world receives just a little bit of light because we are so limited, but really Hashem is an infinite. Okay. So we learned how the concept of contraction, that Hashem really contracted his infinite light, and he brought light into this, like his light is shining in this world, but in a very limited way, like, with all these curtains. Now, what is the result of this? What is the value of what does this light look like in this world in relation to the actual light? Okay, what is the value of something that's limited compared to something that's unlimited? Is there even a relation? So what he says here that there's so what he's going to explain here that there is there, okay, let me ask you, is there a relation between 1 and 1 million? Like if I tell you there's 1 drop, in the ocean, can you compare 1 drop in the entire ocean? It sounds like a lot, like the ocean compared to 1 drop, but it's still measurable, and you can still compare, because if you take 1 drop times a zillion, you'll end up having an ocean, right? Like if you take 1 drop plus another drop plus, a liter plus another liter, you take all these liters, you're gonna end up having an ocean if you count. Like even if it's an unbelievable, like a huge number, you can still compare 1 liter of water to 1 million liters of water. You can still compare it. It's still water. It's still something measurable, because they're both measurable. But the question is, can you compare 1 million to something that has no end, something that has no limit, something that has that's like already, you can't, there's nothing to even compare over here. Like there's nothing to even measure. It's impossible. Okay. When you talk about something that has no end, it's completely another story. You're not talking about a bunch of numbers or huge numbers or small numbers. There's nothing close and nothing far. Like it doesn't even come close. So when you talk about the comparison of 1 to 1 million, it's the comparison is much, whatever, there's something there, there's much closer connection than when you compare even 1 million to unlimited. You understand? Unlimited makes the comparison huge and unimaginable, and you literally can't go there, basically. So what we're trying to say is that this world is so limited, but Hashem's light is unlimited. So Hashem's light that lights up this world has no relation. The light of Hashem in this world is incomparable to the light of Hashem in this world. Like the real light of Hashem is much, 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 much bigger, to a way that we can't even compare to the actual light of what we see, because the contraction is so huge. And what is this contraction? That's what we're saying. Most of the things everything in this world is something that comes from something. If you see a table, it comes from a tree, it comes from paint, it comes from different materials, and they created a table. It's not something that never existed. But when you talk about things that Hashem created, Hashem created things out of nothing. The comparison there is like it's incomparable. Nobody can create something out of nothing. Only Hashem can do it. It's like taking from another world that never existed something and create something, and unlimited. you see that there's like so this concept of yesh mayin, of creating something out of nothing, is something that's, how to say, there's no relation in this world. Like we can't do that, and we can't understand it. But it's something that Hashem can. It's something that only Hashem can. It's just to tell you how huge Hashem is compared to how small the world is. That's basically what we're trying to understand here. Okay. A joke to really illustrate this is very cute, is that there's a person that picked up his hand and he said, Hashem, I know that for you, $1 million is like 1 cent. And I know that for you, 1,000 years is like 1 second. So can you please give me $1 million? So Hashem said, no problem, just wait a second. So that's really like, that's who we are for Hashem. Like, it's like, you can't compare anything. Like it's, so we're going to see here in the last part for today how Hashem, the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain the concept of a value in numbers, that 1 million is really a bunch of 1 times, like it's a million times 1. So that's like how you can compare it. But when you're talking about something that's unlimited, you can't even start counting and start finding a certain value to it. There's no value to it at all. Okay, and he's going to say that the light that's lighting up in this world is no comparison to the actual light, infinite light of Hashem. This light and vitality that is revealed within them after the contraction constitutes of an infinitesimal illumination, and is truly considered as nothing when compared with the quality of the limitless and infinite illumination, as there is no proportion or relationship between them. As the term proportion, when I told you value, the word proportion is a cute word here. As the term proportion is understood in number values, when the number 1 stands in a certain ratio to the number 1 million, for it is 1 millionth part of it. But as regards to a thing which transcends finitude and numeration, there is no number, however great, that can be relative to it. You can't start comparing. For a billion and a trillion, when compared to infinity, do not even attain the relevancy of the value of 1 in comparison with a billion or a trillion. For the sum of 1 retains some degree of relevance, even when compared to a trillion. It is in fact 1 trillionth of it. While even a sum as large as a trillion has no relevance at all when compared to the realm of the infinite, but is veritably accounted as nothing. So anything in this world is really nothing compared to Hashem. You can't even compare. Like it's not even 1 millionth, it's 0 compared to Hashem's light. That's the contraction of Hashem in this world. Okay. So let's summarize what we learned today, and the lesson is going to be super powerful. So we learned that Hashem is unlimited, and his light is unlimited. But this world has a measurement, has a limitation. Even the spiritual world, the next world, has a beginning and an end, and measurements. Even the angels and even the neshamas, okay, they all have certain limits. That's why it's impossible. We can think that it makes no sense that the world that this physical world that's so limited was created by Hashem, who's so unlimited. For Hashem to do that, he had to have a complete, huge contraction from this infinite into something that's measurable, and into creating this measurable world. And there's no value to all these things. Basically, there's no proportion, whatever. All these things, you can't compare this whole world to Hashem's infinite light. Okay, because just like you can compare 1 to 1 million, because then it's like 1 millionth, 1 times 1 million becomes a million. But when there's even a million compared to the whole Hashem that's infinite, there's no comparison. Like, you can't start comparing. Okay, so there's no value to anything in this world compared to Hashem before Hashem contracted himself. Okay, so we understand today how big Hashem is, and how this whole world is very contracted and very limited, and everything in this world that seems to us so important and so valuable is really nothing compared to this unlimited truth of Hashem. You see that? Okay, so now we need to really express this in our day-to-day life, in the way we look at this physical world versus the way we looked at Hashem and the way we look at Torah. Hashem and Torah is not just higher and better and more important in this world. It's like infinitely bigger that we can't even start comparing to this physical world. That's who Hashem is. Hashem is much, much, much bigger than everything else in this world. Okay, so sometimes we start comparing, should I study Torah? Should I do what Hashem wants? Or should I, eat or deal with my personal needs or my physical needs or like these things that this world is, offering me? And sometimes we're going to push away the Torah and we're going to be like, okay, but I need to take care of, these physical things of this world. And we literally compromise on the Torah in order to take care of things that we need to, seemingly very important. But the truth is that we need to try and reveal this huge thing that we discovered today, how this holiness, this godliness is so much bigger and more important in an unbelievable proportion that we can't even measure than all these things in the world. How much bigger is Hashem? How much more important is the Torah than all these things that we think are so because the light is really contracted, where Hashem is super hidden, but we know the truth that this holiness, all these mitzvot are something so big and so much higher, and we should really let go of all the other things and give up on that and really go to the truth and try and do even a little bit of what Hashem wants, just even, that those things really matter. What really matters, what is the truth of the world, what is so much bigger than everything that we see, it's Hashem. It's so much bigger, so much more important. So let's try and express it in our day-to-day life. Hopefully today you saw how Hashem is unlimited and how this world is so contracted and we are so taken over by this world. But let's be reminded of what the truth is and who Hashem is. And next week we're going to continue talking about this contraction of Hashem, but really how Hashem is in comparison to us in this world, that He's really encompassing all worlds and filling up all the worlds. There's this concept of Ora Sovev Kol Almin and Memale Kol Almin. So that's a little bit of what we're going to do next week.